Seeing a quorum of voting members, I call the August 21st Student Achievement and District Instructional Performance Committee of the Whole, a meeting to order. Treasurer Wagner, would you please call the attendance roll?
Mr. Craig,
Here.
Mr. Crossett,
Here.
Mr. Lindy,
He's on his way.
Ms. Mapp,
Here.
Dr. Moffitt, Vice President Weinberg. Here. President Bolton.
Present. Thank you. Interim Superintendent Murphy, would you please lead us off with the following presentations and with whatever board discussion may follow?
My pleasure. We are going to share a preliminary back-to-school update, and I think that you'll see on the next few slides our first day of school, where there are just a lot of smiling faces. I mean, smiling faces with our children, whether they are our elementary school students, our high school students, smiling faces of our staff. Look at Principal Crawford, kind of the lower left corner, the second picture. I mean, she's so full of joy. That far left corner is a high school student. We stopped by Woodward Career Technical High School, so her sleeves, her uniform was adorable.
What school was that?
Oh, that would be Woodward Career Technical High School, home of the Bulldogs. Her left sleeve says, "Came in a pup, leaving out a dog," or something like that. It was so cute. And it was just a really, really great day. So that's Bond Hill Academy, and in those pictures, Woodward Career Technical High School. And then on the next slide, just a few more smiling faces all throughout the district. Nice warm embraces and hugs. And there may be one more with pictures. Oh, and our Connecting Our Community truck that I can't wait for you all to see and experience. We've got Principal Kingman at College Hill in the picture as well, and high-fiving, red carpeting the kids in for the start of the school year. And on the next slide, some of the highlights. So we are proud to have opened 65 schools with 35,000 students. We completed the additions for Hyde Park, for Pleasant Ridge, Montessori, and for Walnut Hills High School. We completed phase 1 of the growth plan, which includes the Dr. Odell Owens Center for Learning, the Promise Center, Riverview East Academy, Schroeder Middle School, and Spencer Center for Gifted and Exceptional Students, all opened on time. We also, in our Student Services Department, opened the Workforce Academy. It is located in our Ezzard Charles building. In a future board meeting, we will recognize our amazing facilities team for the lift this past summer. We also launched, in terms of trying to connect with our community, Sundays with Shauna. We've made 2 stops so far, more stops to come. We held our public back-to-school address that I think was very successful in showcasing our students, from our preschool students to our high school students. Again, rolled out our Connecting Our Communities mobile unit. The purpose of that is to provide an opportunity for us, Cincinnati Public Schools, to go to the community, to the people. So it's a partnership that's a two-way street, and they're not always necessarily coming to us. This is the repurposed tech truck from many moons ago, Jen Wagner and others were a part of that inception. And we just have repurposed it and are very excited about the possibilities of bringing opportunities like enrollment, opportunities like being trained in focus, and just many, many more. We've had a conversation, very brief, with the treasurer about taking a Just Jen on the street using the mobile unit, and so we're so excited. Well, we completed the Athletic Hall of Fame. It is something that we've been talking about for the past several years, but now we have had an opportunity to launch that Hall of Fame. If you have not had a chance to stop by the cafeteria, we invite you to do so. We began transitioning crossing guard responsibilities from the city to our school district. We hosted an amazing back-to-school festival at Washington Park, where we've had great feedback from staff, from our families, from our partners. We hosted the Meet the Interim Superintendent in Washington Park. That was a fun day of no rain. It was absolutely beautiful. We introduced the Here for Kids administration. We began establishing a CPS foundation. We expanded the junior ROTC program at Aiken High School. And we worked with the treasurer to establish the budget task force. And I think there are more, but I thought that fits on that page nicely. So off to a really fantastic start of the 2024-2025 school year.
Thank you. Do members have any questions or comments or additional information?
Yes.
Madam Vice
I
President.
do have some comments. Can we actually go back to that last slide, please, Rob? So I just wanted to, of course, say thank you, and thank you for providing not only these back-to-school updates, but I just wanted to kind of call out a couple of the items. I do know on number 7, where you talked about Superintendent Murphy rolling out the Connecting Our Communities mobile unit, I did get an opportunity on the first day of school to check it out. It is amazing. It is great. It's a nice opportunity for our parents to not only feel engaged, but also to, I guess, get those questions that they need answered and to just get the help that they need. And I think it'll be great, like you said, to provide Treasurer Wagner to come on out and do her little spiel. I think that will.
Just ask Jen.
Yes, promoting it right here, right now. Yeah. And then as we're going on to number 8, especially calling out the Athletic Hall of Fame, I just want to thank all of those who were involved in doing that, and thank you very much. I do know that they are inducting a new class coming October the 14th. I think that is the date. So I do look forward to attending, and hopefully there are some other board members that will attend as well. But in terms of everything that you listed, congratulations, great job, and I do look forward to the rest of the school year.
Thank you. Other comments, questions? Member Mapp.
Yeah, so I just want to echo what my colleagues stated. Thank you for helping to facilitate a successful back to school for our students, for our teachers, and thank you for everyone that really pitched in to make this just a really enjoyable experience for our students and families, and just really showcasing all of the great things that's happening in our district and the different opportunities for engagement. So thank you for presenting this to us. I do have a question. It's not on the slide, but I did want to inquire about our new systems in terms of Focus and Canvas. Is it Canvas or Canva? What is the other system? Is
Canvas.
it Canvas? Canvas, okay. So I just wanted to inquire about how that process is going in terms of ensuring the alignment with all of the systems.
Absolutely. So we are transitioning from PowerSchool was our student information system platform to Focus. And so there are some bumps in the road with Focus, but as we're learning where people are having hiccups, we have an amazing IT team who is working to iron some of those pieces out. If you are a parent and you have any concern, there is a help desk that you can call, or you can call the customer care center, and we're happy to get you to the right place should there be any questions or concerns. So it is out, it's going. Some concerns with students changing schools and making sure the right information is rolling over to the right places. Parents who want to access their student, you have to know your student ID to get in. So some things that we're ironing out, but it's out there, it's rolling.
Okay, perfect. And thank you for providing that additional information to us all to help navigate the system more smoothly.
Thank you. Mr. Lindy.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to apologize for my tardiness. It's nice to see you all, and I wanted to thank Interim Superintendent Murphy for the update. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lindy. Dr. Moffitt.
Well, I won't repeat, but what I will say is that I had an opportunity to attend the back-to-school address, and the energy in the room was great. And thank you to every staff member that came. We had a lot of principals here. We had a lot of community people as well. I've seen the mobile unit. I suggested to the superintendent have it at the next meeting so that we can walk through, because I posted a video on my social media and the feedback was awesome. I was very clear to clarify that this was not new money. This was a repurposed vehicle, and that we've had for a couple years, since before COVID, I think, and that made people even happier. But also want to say to you, we got an email as a board around some of the metro routes. And we had our board member meeting prior to that, to you going to ride the metro,
Yeah.
which was different and was appreciated by the community member parent that sent it in, and was also appreciated in the CPS parent transportation page as well. I'm a member of that group, and they are very, very, very loud about their transportation concerns, and there were only 2 people that expressed concern, which you already knew about, and they were, the other ones were very defensive in how it was going great this year. So thank you for that. Thank you for the updates, and thank you for being kind of hands-on and riding the bus and posting that, and then telling that parent that you would stay in communication with that as well. Can you share a little bit about that particular ride? Because I thought that was actually very interesting. And you invited me to come, and I respectfully declined to ride that particular route. But I do think that that was something that we had not seen before, where it's actually, you know, hands-on, and then you had some reflections, some personal reflections. So can you share what you experienced, how the metros went, I know you were at Government Square as well on the first few days, so can you share any updated information from that?
I'm happy to. Broadly, I will say, I really don't want to, but I will say the Yellow Bus and Metro are going extremely well. So the parent who had the concern about the bus, I learned a long time ago, if you don't understand what people are concerned about, go and walk in their shoes and find out. So I wasn't alone, though. I wasn't alone. Let's see. Oh, he's not in here right now. So John Chambers rode along with me. Chris Burkhart rode along with me. LaRonda Thomas rode along with me, and she's responsible for the photo ops. So we went to Walnut Hills. We waited at the bus stop for the kids. We got on the 24, which was the bus in question. We rode to Mount Washington. I'm not exactly sure where we were. Dan Hoying met us at the bus stop and picked us up and brought us back home. Thank you, Dad. We really enjoyed it because we were on this bus full of kids, well-behaved kids. We spoke to them. They probably thought we were crazy. How was school today? Do you have homework on the first day? I mean, it was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I would do it again. I had not been on the Metro in years. I didn't even know how to put my one ride card in the slot. So the driver had to assist me with that. But that has been great. Metro has been fantastic in terms of coming to the table, helping us problem solve, talking through pieces with us, and being a true partner. They were out at the high schools. They had to have at least 4 or 5 people at each high school last week at least. Government Square, I went there the first day. There were adults there to help the kids navigate getting from one bus to another. We got to talk to children. The Cincinnati Police Department was there being supportive. Lots of people from Metro being there and being supportive. Community members being there and being supportive. It was a really great day. It was a really great effort from everyone in terms of trying to make sure our kids are safe and they knew where they were going. So a fantastic experience. I really don't know that there's anything else I could ask for.
And I do have a question. I know that some of the concerns expressed, and you and I spoke about this at Government Square, are around students from another school. Has there been any conversation with that leadership around getting the cards that we have to provide, that we pay for, to go through CPS so that we are able to track them accordingly?
There is written communication about trying to get the Metro cards as we're providing for our students, for the students of the other school. We do not have the information we need still to date. They don't open until September, I want to say the 5th. So we're still working. We're still working. and we are advocating. We've seen how great and how well these new bus cards are working, and we really want to encourage them to give us the time that we need to process those cards, because they are tied name Shauna Murphy to a particular number, and so there is a process, and it's not done overnight. So what we don't want to have happen is that the school purchase the one ride passes and pass them out. That would be an easy thing to do, but it won't help us in terms of tracking kids getting to and from school safely.
And my last question is, are parents still able to ride for free this week? Was it
Yes,
for
they
2
said
weeks?
2 weeks, yes.
Okay, so it's this week as well, so parents
Yes,
can
ma'am.
still just, and they don't need anything to get on the bus, they just need to say, I'm a parent riding the bus with my son. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
correct.
Mr. Clausen.
Thank you for all the updates. I did attend the back-to-school address here. It was great. A lot of positive energy, and I enjoyed being there. I did attend the Hughes clap-in, and it wasn't quite the clap-in that I think they'd hoped for, because I think maybe the Yonder packs took a little more to distribute. But that's, the way it goes. But there were a lot of, it was great weather, so everybody could be outside. I could talk to lots of people. I met lots of people, so it was good energy at Hughes. I have some questions. On your community engagement trips with the mobile?
The mobile unit?
Yeah. How do people know where you're going and when you're going to go?
That's a great question. We do have a schedule. I did meet with Ms. Thomas, our parent champion, just today. We do have a schedule. Friday will be at Reese Price. I will share the schedule with all the board members. We will get it posted. We did literally just talk about this today.
Sure, but
Yes.
it's for the parents, right? or
It's
not?
for the parents, it's for the community.
So that school, it's incumbent on the school to publish that too, at the school?
Yes, it would be helpful for the school to publish it, as they know that we're coming to them, and there have been conversations about coming between Ms. Thomas, the parent champion, and the school principal and/or resource coordinator.
Great. And then I had another question on the Hall of Fame. I got to
Yes.
walk around over there. It looks really cool. Mary Weinberg's in the Hall of Fame. But I'm wondering, is there a plan or not to go forward and also have a page on the CPS website for a Hall of Fame page on the website?
Why do I feel like where was I looking? Yes,
Just a thought.
we can talk with our communications team about that. This is a piece we've been working on for yes is the answer.
Just a thought. And can you tell a little bit more about the CPS Foundation?
Yes.
Is there a person who's in charge of that, and are there targets and?
Infancy stages about the CPS Foundation, having conversations, bringing people to the table. The first day of school, I did a presentation to the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. We are looking at some follow-up conversations about any potential donors who may be interested in first learning more about what we want to do, why. So infancy stages.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, my pleasure.
Other members have questions or comments? Chairman Craig?
Again, to echo what everyone else said here today is thank you for providing the update. I know the start of the school year is a crazy and hectic one. For those of us who spend a lot of time in Clifton, it's been an even more crazy one this week because we have 2 schools starting back, both UC and Hughes. The one thought that I did have, and I know we talked about it at our joint meeting with the city and us and our board, but still there's some concerns I have with regard to just this transitioning process for the crossing guards. I know this is a position that's a very difficult one to fill in general, and the amount of effort and lack thereof I think the city has put into truly staffing those positions has made it that much more difficult for us to be able to truly take on and hire folks. Additionally, it's something that you do for a couple hours a day. So I just wanted to make sure that we are getting support from the city as we do that transition to ensure that we do have those folks, as I mentioned at the meeting, that would be staying in as crossing guards as we do that transition from being city employees to being CPS employees.
So right now, we do have the list of crossing guards and where they are stationed, where they're working. I can share that if that's of interest to you. There are some gaps. We are in a transition period through December. And in January, we take it over completely. So we are a little, we do have a little pause about it for reasons you said and more, but we're ready. We've got personnel in place to lead, guide, and direct the work, and we'll be there before December.
And then with that, there are a number of places where both our students and students who are not attending CPS schools were utilizing crossing guard services. And so and maybe this is more for a public message more than anything else, I think it's a disappointment in some ways that we have to take the time and effort to make sure that we are finding these folks in new ways and inventive ways. But it's even more important because it's not just our students who are getting served by these crossing guards. And so I do think it is a very important task that we also acknowledge in the same way we do with our bus service. And the fact that we make a special point and effort to create routes that will work for our other schools that are within the city and our children that live within the district but don't necessarily attend our schools. That's something that we have to go above and beyond to make sure we do correctly. And so I think it is such an important part to acknowledge that even as we come back to school, it's not just about our schools that we have to worry about. It's about all the children who live within our district boundaries that we have to be paying that attention to ensure that they get to school safely and that their pathways to there are safe. And so I just want to commend the great work we're doing on there, and hopefully this transition will have a lot of support as we make that transition over. The one other thing that I just really want to I think it's been a great opportunity to hear more about is just the continuing number of students who are showing up at our schools. And just, I know each year we start the school year with one number, and as we slowly transition throughout the year, we get more and more students who end up coming back. And so just wanted to hear what the expectations or what the thoughts are with regards to kind of where we will be in a few weeks or in a month or so as we look at enrollment numbers.
Right, we always look to Labor Day is still the magical term. So we're making calls to families where children have not shown up yet, and we continue to work on that.
And then last is just with regards to our enrollment numbers, do those include the preschool numbers? Because I know it's another one of those things that is a rolling enrollment number throughout the year.
And preschool just started Monday.
Okay.
Are there other questions from other members? I would like to ask just a couple. Of course, I'm very concerned about when you said something about gaps regarding crossing guards. That would mean that does that mean that there's a crosswalk that doesn't have somebody manning it? Okay, that's a real problem. What is the school community itself doing about it? I know we don't have authority out in the streets, but I'm worried about people crossing without some adult helping.
Yeah, understandable, and we are too. So what the city is still actually hiring to place those adults where there is no adult right now, and we're working with them to transition to become CPS employees.
Okay, but in the transition, it's been clear that they didn't make us responsible for everything at the beginning of the school year. Were we in some sort of negotiations or were they so insistent to hand it over before we were ready? Or before they were ready to hand it over?
We worked with them on trying to have more time, more support, they want to be done. They want to be done.
I think that needs to be real clear that that is a responsibility that they had. And because this is a real problem. And I know you all have worked on trying to get the city to be more responsive or take time to do this. But do we have any idea where the gaps are? I mean, of course you know where the gaps are.
Yes.
Is it 20% of the crosswalks? Is it 50%? Is it?
Oh, it's not 50%. It might be closer to 20%.
Okay.
And again, I can share with you, we do have the locations and we do have the names of the crossing guards that are in place right now.
Is it possible that the city can help us, not just with new crossing guards, but increased police effort or something that we could be requesting of them? Or they have no interest in doing that?
We can ask about increased police effort, but there was no volunteering of increased of anything, I would say.
I'm really not surprised, but to follow up with what Chairman Craig mentioned about multiple schools, I know the first 2 years that we had to assume, forgive the history lesson, the first 2 years that we had to assume payment for crossing guards, we found out that 2 or 3 years that we did that, we found out that the parochial system didn't have to pay for the ones that were covering the parochial schools. And I remember Superintendent Ronan being extremely concerned about that, even though she is a product of the parochial system. So I do think it is that layering we might want to see where there are those particular schools, just to make sure, are we responsible for them, whether there's an overlap or not an overlap, or individual, just to add to our concerns about that. Vice President?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something, sorry about that. In terms of, as we're transitioning, is there any way that we can maybe suggest even to the city, maybe doing like a call out? You know, like how for the first student, I would drive around and I would see all of the yard signs saying they're hiring. Maybe putting out a push for crossing guards somehow from the city aspect, and then maybe combining with us. And then I know some schools, they do have parent volunteers, and I know, of course, you have to be obviously vetted and, going through the whole process. But for right now, in this, I would say that this is an emergency situation because, we have our students crossing. Is there any way to employ them and get them out somehow?
We definitely can do a push ourselves, and we certainly can ask the city to support us in that way. We have not.
We can ask the city too.
But we certainly can do that. It is an emergency.
Yes, and I was just saying to President Bolton, I know definitely we can reach out to the city as well. And I know we have to get something done. The children are important as they're crossing.
Yeah, I think that even a letter from the board to the council, I'm sure the council's unaware of this. I mean, I'm very supportive of us assuming this responsibility, but I thought the passing of the baton would be more facilitated. Dr. Moffitt.
So I want to ask, what is our awareness campaign internally? Because I was at Shorter Middle School, and there's a retired person, this is before school opened, there's a retired person that lives a couple doors down, and the principal battle was talking about engaging that person, and I said, why don't you ask them to be a crossing guard? And she said, I just never thought about that. So what is our internal infrastructure with asking our principals to maybe go next door, go to churches or LSDMCs to find someone next door or locally within the block? I think we need to do an education awareness campaign. I think that people don't exactly know who has the responsibility for crossing guards is one problem, because quite frankly, it was unclear for me as well at one point. And then maybe there are some retired persons that could benefit from just that small amount of engagement and awareness to let them know what's going on. But I think we're gonna have to do a little bit more than just, media press releases and letters. I would love to see our staff be more informed and then maybe find a buddy. If we can incentivize that internally to say, hey, how many schools have crossing guards, that have reached out to your neighbors? I don't know, I don't want to minimize it, but I'm just saying what awareness is for our own staff to get that word out.
Appreciate that suggestion. We'll start to implement that. You're right, there is not a campaign like that right now, so I appreciate it.
Member Mapp?
Thank you. I do have one question about the crossing guards. So I do know that maybe at some schools there are maybe roughly 2 crossing guards, and I don't know if that's based on need and like in determining how many crossing guards you have, but I'm wondering if there's a way of, if some schools have more than one, if we're able to disperse them to other schools.
I think they determine the crossing guards based on traffic flow patterns and other things that we could talk about later, but I think it's determined a particular way, or at least it has been, which also is a reason it gives me pause, but we'll take a look at that and we'll ask the city about their rationale, or they can share with us their rationale.
Any other questions regarding any of these topics? I have a question, and maybe General Counsel can answer this, or I don't know if it requires that, but you mentioned the other school, and I'm assuming we're talking about Dawn School?
Yes, I assume that's what the school
Okay.
Dr. Moffitt was referring to.
Is that the school? And I just wanted to be out there. Aren't we supposed to have to, the non-CPS students are to receive what we provide the CPS students, I mean, by law. But the fact that we don't have to provide transportation to high school people, does that make a difference in us saying to the Dawn people, you will do it the way we're doing it?
If we provide high school transportation to our own students, we then have an obligation of providing the same level of transportation to non-CPS schools. The only difference is if we determine it to be impractical to transport those students, we have the option of providing a stipend, a payment in lieu of transportation. But where we have decided to offer transportation to our own high school students, we have to offer the same level of service to non-CPS students.
And I'm cool with that, but the issue is, I don't know that they should have a choice about what kind of cards they want to use. If we're required by law to offer them the same services that we have, wouldn't that be tactically or from an implementation, this is what we're doing, so you will too?
Yeah, there is a parallel sort of requirement. So if, for example, our cards are restricted cards that we're offering, we could put the same kind of restrictions on.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, so they don't have any discretion in saying, no, we're not going to use your cards, we're going to use these kinds of cards, where there is less accountability.
I don't exactly, again, I don't have any details about any specific school outside of CPS, but if they purchase their own cards, we would have no control over that. That would be entirely within their discretion.
Okay, but if we're paying for them.
Then we have an obligation to provide similar service to what we provide to our
Great.
own students.
But if they want to buy them,
Correct.
then
That's-
we don't really care, except there's no accountability, and that becomes the city's problem, not ours.
We wouldn't have anything to do with that at that point.
And I think that, to your point, is why the city had written communication to them, urging them to work with CPS.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Dr. Moffitt?
Well, of course, I have one more question. So would like to get clarification, because you bring up a very valid point to me. and let's just put the elephant in the room. So Jen, Don, we are required by law to provide transportation to non-CPS schools, public, private, and charter. Is that right? And if, does that transportation include a reimbursement? So if Don doesn't give us their information timely and they go out and purchase something that they deem to be equal for their students, but yet we're required to provide the transportation, are they asking us for reimbursement of that charge? Or they're just doing that on their own? They're not going back, they're not going through CPS, and we're not financially responsible for that?
Well, I've not been requested to reimburse anybody for transportation. There was an option where charter schools could opt out, or non-publics could opt out and provide their own. Do you
And
recall
they
that?
had been in the past.
They had been, but I've never been asked to reimburse them.
So then technically, they are not getting any transportation, either services or monetary reimbursement from CPS for their students. Is that right?
That's right, that's right,
If they opt out.
if they don't.
Yeah.
But last year, and I won't be able to speak well about it, they purchased buses for their children that they were not able to use. I think there were people who had concerns about then how the students were being transported to and from school, which then led to, can you partner with CPS? My concern is, okay, great, partner with CPS, but we need the data sooner as opposed to later. And I don't then want there to be any report to the state that we didn't provide it in a timely manner, that then it could cost us.
Oh, I get it. I just am wondering what vehicle do we have to force them to work with us was really my issue. And if it, to your point of providing equal accessibility as our own, if they were getting reimbursed from us for what they've purchased for those one-day passes, then I think it would be a little easier. But if there is no caveat, how can we enforce that?
It's no different than any other charter school. We have no leverage over them providing us with timely information. Unless if they really want transportation bad enough, they'll provide the information. But if they don't, we don't have any leverage over that.
Okay, thank you.
But if we pay for it, they will do as we do.
I think that's what I heard Dan say.
We have to provide the same level of service. So if we're providing
Got that.
citywide, we have to offer it citywide.
Totally there.
Yeah.
But if they opt out and they're paying for their own, we can't do anything about it except make it very clear to the city that we're out of it.
If they opt out of,
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, and I think we're ready for the next presentation.
Absolutely. So our next presentation, Goals and Guardrails on Guardrail 1 and 2, our Assistant Superintendent for District Performance, Growth, Sustainability, and Redesign, Mr. John Chambers.
Good evening, Board President Bolton, Vice President Weinberg, and members of the board. Today, we will be reviewing Guardrail 1, the whole child and the interims, and Guardrail 2, discipline and the interims there. In our next meeting, we will be reviewing Guardrail 3, district communication and interims, and Guardrail 4, resources and interims. So Guardrail 1, the superintendent will not ignore the needs and talents of the whole child by providing for students' mental and physical well-being through academics, the arts, athletics, civic engagement, career opportunities, and leadership development. So Guardrail 1A, the percentage of high school students participating in arts and athletics-based extracurricular activities will increase from 58% in May of 2023 to 60% by May of 2025. And looking at the data, if you look in the fall of 23-24, we were at 64.6%, which was on target for our goal. And in the spring of 23-24, that number is now, was 25.8. And there is a reason for that number to have dropped so drastically. I actually was super surprised when I saw it. But then, once we did some digging and we looked, it's like the fall 23-24 data, the percentage of students is higher because it included all of the students that were enrolled in arts classes in their schools. So that was the art classes plus the extracurriculars. But in the spring of 2023-24, the percentage of students, it dropped because the data reflects the students who are enrolled in extracurricular activities after school. So the fall data included classes that the students were taking during the school day, and then in the spring, it was just after school extracurriculars and athletics. So, once we get the, that data to match, because the fall data does not match the spring data because it's based on two different types of assessments that we use to look at that data. So, our goal is to look at the data and have an accurate comparison with data that is taken from schools in our students in after-school activities. Guardrail B, the percentage of elementary school students who have a favorable response for a sense of well-being on the Panorama Survey will increase from 56% in May of 2023 to 60% in May of 2025. And if you look at the 23 or 22-23 data, numbers, we have 56% favorable, and in the spring, it was 59%. So that was a 3% increase, and we are well on our way to our target of 60%. Some of our takeaways and next steps. We have not a new system of tracking the fine arts data, but we have merged our fine arts data collection into the same program that we use for our athletics. And that program is called Final Forms. So as the students are participating in extracurricular activities after school, in the different programs that may not be at the school, those students will be put into Final Forms. So we're tracking the amount of students and the amount of participation that we have in the fine arts as well as athletics, and it will be housed in the same software. So we'll be able to pull that data for accurate comparison. We have a couple, excuse me, I'm getting a little tongue-tied. And with, if you look at bullet number 3, it's a set school focus areas for climate and culture for this school year. And I'm working with Monisha House with the PBIS and the principals and those PBIS teams to determine what those focus areas will be for the schools. And, bullet 4, we have, kind of narrowed down our, student data collection as far as surveys to a survey platform called Qualtrics. So we'll be collecting student surveys using that platform.
Before we move on to number
Yes.
2, to take some questions on this, if we could.
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
So just really just 2 questions or 2 thoughts on this. One is, I think, it's one of the things we talk about at times on audit committee, that you have to have a consistency of systems in order for us to be able to do evaluations. And so I think what you're speaking to is just trying to figure out what system of measuring these numbers will make sense to do as a continuum. And so I think that's something at least to present, at some point once it's kind of figured out, to bring that back to us so that we can also understand what ongoing or upcoming information will look like. Because I do think that's a valid point to say if you're tracking extracurriculars after school on one semester and then throughout the day on another, it's very different. The second thought, and I think this is just another area of where maybe if we're not tracking it or if we are tracking it, how we're tracking it, is that there are a number of programs and extracurriculars that are done by other organizations or other agencies that still connect with the student after school. And I'm just wondering if that's included within. So if a student participates in an organization's activity that picks them up or takes them after school, is that considered part of those extracurriculars, arts or sports or and that type of deal?
I imagine that it probably wasn't, because I don't think Dr. Rudnick would track those types of things, but definitely something to look for. And to me, that would be an easy consideration to pull in the resource coordinators for those types of programs.
Vice President?
Yes, so I just wanted to make sure, you said that we are going to be utilizing final forms. Okay, so who will oversee that? Will it be the principals? Will it be the ADs? Will it be the teachers for the clubs or the extracurricular activities? Who's going to oversee that? The individuals are filling out that paperwork, making sure that it's there, and then who's going to oversee that information to make sure that it's there in the end?
Not 100% sure on the separation of school versus, after school.
Right.
But in talking, with Dr. Rudnick, as he's starting to move, because there are two different, types of collection. It would be collection from the district-run type after-school
Right.
programs, and then you have the in-school
Right.
marching band, things like that. Those, I imagine that data will be collected at the school level. And just like for athletics, all of the players, they have to be for a football team, they have to be in final forms. So I think that will be the same mechanism we'll use for fine arts.
Yeah, I think that would be important to figure out because, like you stated, for sports, it's pretty simple and easy. You know that they have to have that. But I think it gets a little tricky as you're getting into the extracurricular and then making sure for the clubs too as well. So that would be a good question to follow back up on.
Other questions, comments? Member Mapp?
Thank you, President Walton. So my question is for Guardrail 1B concerning the sense of well-being. So I'm glad to see that we are identifying year-over-year gains from 22-23 to 23-24. But I am curious about the decline with the data from the fall 23-24 to spring 23-24. And I was wondering if there's any context around the data that we're seeing here with those significant point differences.
Not that I have particularly, but what we have discussed is looking at the data, quarterly to see if there is some correlation between student satisfaction in Q1 over time versus Q3, because you're going from the beginning of school to where now you're in school for 3 quarters, and it, that perception may change. So I think looking at it, more holistically over a shorter period of time can give us an idea of we need to change or alter some programming to, for example, in the wintertime where people generally are a little bit more, anxious because of the weather, maybe there's an opportunity to see if there is a correlation with that. So as we, push our programming out to the students, we know exactly what to target and when.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay, I'll go to Mr. Crossan.
Yes, thank you for these endeavors. They're interesting and could be helpful to gain insights. I was curious about the extracurricular activities measurement. I would imagine it varies by school.
Yes.
And so are you able to deploy your efforts to the schools that are in most need of raising their percentage?
Yes, as we look at the overall percentage of students that are engaged in extracurricular activities, I'm working with Dr. Rudnick and Josh Harden. We're looking at ways to tailor programming for those individual schools. It's not as much as a one-size-fits-all because some schools will not respond as well to having a club soccer team as another school. So, as we continue these conversations, we're looking to tailor it towards those individual schools' needs.
their follow-up. On the art classes that got included, are those classes electives?
I would imagine for the most part, they would be electives.
So even though it's not part of the measurement, but it might be interesting to continue looking at that, just as a side stat maybe, as long as you're collecting the data. I mean, I don't know, might be helpful to know that we have lots of kids that are interested in art.
Vice President?
I just had a follow-up to Board Member Mapp's question in regards to the decrease. So if you go back to that particular slide, at the bottom, it does show that the responses in terms of the number of amount of students were a little different. So I'm not quite sure if there is a plan to make sure that we're hitting those numbers, because I see in 2022-23, there were only 5,853. Then moving into the fall, it was 7,928, but then it did drop in the spring to only 7,212 responses. So that could be an issue too.
And we're also looking at the timing of when the surveys go out to ensure that we have greater participation from the student population and as well from the parents. So if you're sending them out and if we have a certain time period where we're sending them out, not right before winter break, because that's when a lot of people are stressed out. Not right before spring break because people are ready to go. But get them out in a timely, in a manner in which the students aren't so pressed up against time, and the parents have time to actually give us good feedback that we want to use to guide the decisions that we make.
Other questions, comments? Dr. Moffitt?
So thank you for the data. I'm particularly stunted at slide 4, if you could go back, or let me see, yeah, 4, Rob, on 1A around your sharing of the differentiation in the data. That kind of stunted me a little bit, that we are measuring both of those things and that the number decline was inclusive of arts during the day, which I'm not exactly sure if that was the intention of, or should have been the intention of the guardrail, because those are things that should have been taken anyway. So in your review of the data, since it's already skewed heavily, is it possible to disaggregate that data and then have it just be arts and then athletics?
I think we can.
To just have them be that way, because that is such a huge decline, and the 64.6 should not have been inclusive of day classes anyway. So since we don't, I'm assuming we don't have that data to take that number out. I don't know if this is a rewrite of that interim guardrail, or if this is really just a moving forward clarification, but I'm wondering if that should just be cleaned up some, because it should be arts, it should be athletics, and then maybe that number should add up to whatever the total is. But it should be arts extracurricular, not arts during the day, and then extracurricular athletics. That just doesn't feel right to me. And then I'm very interested in seeing it quarterly. If you could get it quarterly, I think perhaps even
Can't
that
promise.
makes. I know you're trying. I know you're trying. It's not a dig. It's just trying to see if it is truly on track, since we already know that the number is that the number previously was not accurate. And then one interesting thing that comes to mind is that our student population is so transient anyway. And I've got some mentees that were at West High. Well, they were at Aiken. They're at West High. Now they're going back to Aiken in one school year. And so because of that, I'm wondering if that type of transition would skew our data. So it leads me to my question, which is, are there any qualitative segments that we could take out of there, some of this data, to explain the number? So for instance, if one student has been at a school and we test them, maybe that's the decline in the number and that they were taken out. I don't know, we don't know, but maybe I spent a semester at Ada S, and so, I'm not happy right now. My mental is off. I don't know, but is there any collection of qualitative data around making sense of this data? And I know Panorama, I thought we still had a contract with them, but they do have some free services too. And so maybe we could do something, I don't know, and I'm never about spending the money, but I'm wondering if we could get some collection of data for the first quarter, just to be able to compare, to make a comparison of what we're looking for. Does that make sense? So if we can just get something on the free side or whatever, with whatever we have, with accurate collection of data, and then maybe move, but we're moving with some baseline that makes sense.
Dr. Moffitt, we don't have the Panorama survey platform anymore.
Okay,
We are looking and talking about other options. We could set this up in a Qualtrics format. We do have access to that. But to your point about quarterly, I think my hunch is, the offerings each quarter for athletics is going to vary.
sure.
So you can have X number of opportunities for girls volleyball, X number of opportunities for boys basketball. The number of opportunities quarter to quarter could change. We could dig in quarterly, yes. We can also dig in by school. Looking at number of opportunities available and how many students actually take advantage of those opportunities. We can also look at transient population or other factors that may impact what we're looking at.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could take it off the paper a little bit, because it may offer some explanation to the data. And additionally, I'm wondering, how are we dispersing the surveys? Because there used to be a time when, maybe it's a long time ago, but advisory used to put the surveys on Blackboard or Power School, maybe now Focus. Are we able to get the collection from the students, and I don't know, accurately? I'm just wondering if we can make some sense of all this. And we weren't privy to how this was collected before, so I don't know. I'm not
I think
comparing.
we have the Canvas platform now that we probably could do that on. And I also really like your suggestion of breaking out athletics and extracurriculars. That makes total sense to me. So if that is a recommendation we could bring back and get support for, I would like that a lot. And again, I would love to show you by school.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the report.
Well, before we move on, I just wanted
No,
to give, oh, I'm sorry, we got another question.
Mr.
Sorry.
Lindy,
Oh, sorry.
you gotta recognize him. He's
No,
from
thank you very
Walnut,
much.
for goodness sake.
Yeah, I got the biggest ears up here of anybody sitting at the table, so that's hard to miss. I wanted to start by saying just how grateful I am that we're doing this. I think both as a parent and as a board member. I think often we get into this really, I think just unfortunate space of like either you only care about kids' test scores or you care about the whole child, and I just reject that distinction. I think as a dad, I want my kids to be able to read and do math really well. I want them to find what they love in the world. If that's reading and math, cool. If it's art, great. If it's the guitar, fine. But I mean, I want them to find a way to be a full person. And so I think this is important. I'm really, really glad that it's on here. I want to say thank you. I think I had just a couple of questions. You can take or leave this first one. If I think about a high school student and the value that's behind the guardrail and being a full human who learns and cultivates loves and passions that they have, I can see somebody doing that in a class, particularly if they have to work after school. And so a student who graduates with a new love for the arts that they got through a great teacher in CPS, when they have to work to support their family after school, I think it's a win. I think it's a huge win. And so I think one nice flexibility that's built into this governance model is the administration writes the interim guardrails. And the administration comes up with what we should look at to check to see if we're honoring the value that is behind the guardrail. So I would feel great about a world where what we're looking at is one where, are we doing those things for kids that we care about? And if that comes through a class in school, great. No sweat off my brow whatsoever. But again, your call. I just want to share that and you all do with it what you decide to do. I think the question I wanted to ask, can you say more about what the plan is to get real visibility into student experience, staff experience, family experience without the Panorama survey?
For me, that's why I mentioned the possibility of doing this through Qualtrics. Brian Sershin will kill me, but Qualtrics. And there may be other platforms that could be used that we could survey the parents. In the past, we have had others. We've used POSIP for the sentiment piece, as well as for some generalized feedback, and others. Gallup is one that we used before Panorama as well. So there are other possibilities, and then we could even create our own Google questions if we needed to.
I appreciate the options. I think the things that give me some concern about them, what is powerful about Panorama, I think, is that you get 3 constituencies. So you get kids, you get families, you get staff. I don't know that Gallup does that. I think Gallup is staff-facing. There might be a family or student Gallup-facing version that I don't know about. The other thing you get with Panorama that is really great is you can benchmark your results against other school districts. It may not be specific ones, but it would be the average across other school districts. So we can tell, I think we should be the best in the country on some things. And we can actually look and see how close or far away are we from doing that. With a Google survey, you can't do that. So I'm trying to I remember there were conversations about this. I could be wrong. My memory was that this was a financial concern and that Panorama was cut so that we could get to our budget target.
Yes, we did.
Do you remember how much it was?
No, 200,000? I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
One thing I'll request, and I know we've got other stuff to do tonight, but I would love to know how much would it cost for us to use Panorama for the next 2 or 3 years if the only concern about it was financial. The reason I'm asking is I think we could fundraise for that privately. I think we could take it off the CPS books. I think there are enough foundations that care about seeing strong progress for kids, for staff, for families in CPS that we could fundraise it privately. And I'd be interested in seeing what the cost of that would be. Thank you.
Any other comments? As the chair, I'm really trying hard that we do these committee of the whole and end at 5:30. That being the case, we have another discipline, another guardrail, but we're also supposed to be going to executive session. I would suggest that what we were going into executive session for is also going to be on our Monday night executive session. But let me give you a preliminary topic, at least one of the topics, and maybe General Counsel has an additional one for property. And it was, again, revisiting the proposal out of Aiken High School from the Camping Foundation. And so I think General Counsel's already shared a comparative memo with us last week or 2 weeks ago, and that's what we'll be discussing, so that we just wanted to have a preliminary discussion before we would try to discuss it more deeply on Monday. General Counsel, was there anything else regarding property? So if you could resend what you sent to us so that we have that, and then that way we won't have an executive session tonight because we want to get back to the 90-minute period. But let me really throw a wrench in everything. Knowing how long we spent writing this guardrail, there are 6 different things on this guardrail. Not 2, there's 6. And nobody has the time or whatever to do it, but it goes back to something that I think the member Morosky and I talked about years ago in student achievement, which was really, it was sort of a student a student engagement plan. We changed it to individual engagement, meaning we heard a presentation, the more a child or a teenager is engaged in school, the more successful they are. I mean, that's standard operating procedure. And so you almost have to look at all 6 of these, have to get some kind of plan for every kid or be, measuring it. But I see here academics, I see here arts, I see athletics, I see civic engagement, I see career opportunities and leadership development. So those were all separate things. I mean, a young lady that's doing the, Girls to Women, or for the MORE program, those are also essential things. And the time span is important. If somebody's committed to a year-long, there are 3 sports letters, so to speak, I'm dating myself saying that, but, or if it's a club that lasts all year long. So I think there's a way to start to look at this from an individual kid, and it's way too big a thing to, but we spent time trying to come up with these 6 things. Back there over on the, whatever, Launch Ed side of the building. So that's just my comment. And I'm with Mr. Lindy on the fact that if it's happening during the day, that counts, because look what we're spending. We're making a major investment, K-8-3, and it is going to be that class that maybe that kid can't do an extracurricular, but if they're singing in choir or writing music or doing anything else. So just as a thought. Guardrail 2.
Okay, Guardrail 2, the superintendent will not allow discriminatory or culturally insensitive disciplinary treatment that results in disproportionate punishment among students to go unaddressed. And if you look at Guardrail 2A, it's the percentage of K-12 Black students, Hispanic students, and multiracial students with a Category 2 infraction compared to white students would decrease from 15.4 points in May of 2023 to 12.5 points by May of 2025. And if you look at the combined delta from the 2022-23 to 23-24, there was a 0.3% increase in the Category 2 infractions overall. We haven't been able to do an analysis to determine, root causes. However, we, are, never satisfied with, when we're not on track for, to hit our target. So, I'm, looking to work with, Monisha House with PBIS to look at the data to see where those, how did those number of infractions increase? And are they coming from a particular grade level per se? Or are they coming in, at a particular point in the, in the school year where there was that increase? So that's why it's really important for us to look at not just the data over time, but a data, a little bit more in frequency to see if there is a correlation to a given time, a given month, a given portion of the year. But with the district, we're continuing to implement the PBIS strategies. We have also added SEL, which will include restorative practice circles, and those will be in most of the school's master schedules. We're working closely with our mental health agencies that are housed within the buildings. We have, on constant communication with MindPeace. And then this is done regularly to not only to problem solve, but to actually look at heading potential problems off, right? There are several schools right now that have implemented what they refer to as MindPeace rooms. These particular rooms are set up to where it's more of a preventative. It's to get to this, get to the student before the behavior escalates. And another partnership we have is with Children's Hospital. And with this partnership, we will also continue to focus on social and emotional learning. And our school social workers are working with our ALC paraprofessionals to ensure that the restorative practices, are implemented to prevent future infractions. And in our, as far as our restorative practices, one thing that I know will help greatly is we have cohort 2 had completed their restorative practices training in June. So we currently now have an additional 250-ish of our CPS faculty and staff that have been trained in restorative practices. So, in implementing those, restorative practices in the cohort 2 schools, of course, the goal is to reduce the number of infractions, especially of category 2 nature. And guardrail 2B, the percent of K-12 black male students with a category 2 infraction compared to white males will decrease from 20.4 points in May 2023 to 13 points in May of 2025. And looking at our combined delta, again, we had a slight change of 0.7%. And, again, implementing the strategies and the service increase that I have outlined will help address that increase as well. And guardrail 2C, the percent of students in grades 7 to 12 who have a favorable response for a teacher-student relationship on Panorama Student Survey will increase from 48% in May of 2023 to 52% by May of 2025. And attached in the, in the agenda is the Panorama Survey results from June 3rd that the board and have went over in the June board meeting. So those survey results are there. And our next steps, I'm not gonna, we talked about the, some of the things that we're doing from some of the takeaways from that data, but we are, continuing the code of conduct implementation and alignment with our school leaders. We have, over the last couple of years, we've had new principals, new staff, so making sure that they are in alignment with our code of conduct is, very important. And again, like I mentioned, to continue to restorative practices with cohort 1 and bringing on cohort 2, who has been trained. That has been completed as well. And to continue trainings for mental health, first aid with school staff, that is underway as well. And we've been participating in cross-city collaborations sessions surrounding youth violence. So these things have already were underway or well underway. And that the last bullet, please forgive me, that should not be on there because the code of conduct has been approved.
Questions, comments? Mr. Craig?
So I want to just highlight a couple of things that I saw in the data there, and I think one of them to note is again, we don't always take wins from where we feel like we're not on track, but I think the decrease in Hispanic, percentage of Hispanic students with category 2 infractions is worth noting, and I think we've talked about this before. I think some of that may be from also us having more resources for those students who are English as a second language or ELL learners. That's a helpful part to that, is when you know the rules and you know what you're supposed to do and you're able to have communication with folks and parents are involved in that conversation, you tend to see better results that come out of that. So I do think it's worth noting that they're the only group that we looked at that had a drop in their CAT percentage rate. So I think that's, at least a positive in that rate. And I think there's some things we may think about with regards to other members of different demographics as to what other factors might be involved. I think you mentioned several of them as ways to think about those. But I wanted to, I think also highlight one part to this that sometimes also gets missed, which is the number of our students who are suffering from things like homelessness or housing instability and these factors that we as a district don't have control over, but can play a large part in how their behavior in a school might be affected. And we know that that number has increased over the last year. And so I think it's just worth noting that that also may be a factor, is how much of a child is in a stable environment and able to process things and able to understand things and communicate things in a way because their whole community is safer, is better, is healthier. Definitely has to play a part in how a student behaves in a school, right? We know that that's true. And so I think it's just worth noting that those are certainly some other factors that could be involved.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. Other comments? Member Mapp?
I just want to say, as a licensed counselor, I really appreciate the next steps. It really does touch upon preventative measures and that holistic approach. So, I'm really happy to see a detailed plan of areas to target for improving discipline. I am curious to know about the restorative practice. Can you provide a little bit more clarity on what that looks like, that framework overall? Because I'm interested in knowing if the students are engaged in that process of maybe establishing goals and interventions and working collaboratively to help, again, work through whatever challenge they may have been experiencing, but to also help to take ownership in that progress moving forward. So I'm curious to know what that framework looks like.
I'll do some research.
Other questions, comments? Mr. Crossett?
Thank you for this research and collecting the data. I think it's important. I'm just wondering, I kind of want to reiterate what my fellow board member commented about, but I think that it might be interesting, I don't know if it's possible or appropriate to correlate some of the data with whether or not the student has a family that has economic challenges or some other challenges. That might be interesting to know. And also, it seems like the percentage is pretty high, overall. And maybe I was wondering over time, maybe you could, I know you've got a list of strategies of things that you're looking to do to improve this, but maybe you could look at other school districts or other places where there's maybe some things that we can do or that might be really transformative, because it feels like maybe we're just nudging it along a little bit rather than maybe looking at something that could be more dramatic. It's a pretty, percentages are kind of high, and maybe we got to think about how we can really do something big with that over time, possibly. How's that?
Excellent. I'm not a big fan of incrementalism either. Dr. Moffitt?
So when I see off track, it makes me pause a little bit, not in a negative, just like, I'm going to offer caution that we don't urge our staff to be like, hey, this is off track, let's get the number down so we're not reporting things consistently and accurately. To that end, how are we ensuring that there is consistency amongst reporting Category 2 infractions and what gets to a Category 2 infraction? So I ask that question because having taught in the schools, sometimes one teacher's Category 2 might be another teacher's Category 1. So and I know you know exactly what I'm talking about, having been there. So I guess my question is along the lines of the data should be the data. I'm wondering how we are reporting it, if that is consistent. So a Category 2 offense should be consistent, but is there consistency in getting to the definition and the infraction of a Category 2? So how are we training our staff on being consistent so that a true Category 2 is a Category 2 and not, well, Ms. Jones said it was a Category 2, but Ms. Smith said, I did the same thing last week and it wasn't a Category 2. I guess and that's really more internal, because I'm thinking the infractions code of conduct, that's consistent. But where I have seen disparity is in how it gets reported. Some students can say, well, I did the same thing and it's okay, or I do this in Ms. Moffitt's class and it's not a problem. So what are we doing to tighten that ship so that we can ensure, no, this is a Category 2 across our district. So if you go to West High, if you go to Aiken, if you go to Woodward, if you go to Walnut, it's a Category 2. And I'm not saying that we don't do that. I just want to put that into this.
Right.
To me, that's more qualitative. That's more taking it off the paper rather than it is getting anybody in trouble. I don't want to do that. But then also the fact that Black students remain a consistent disparity is alarming to me. Now the data says it, and so we have proof that it's that way. But I'm also, it makes me trigger to want to do something a little different. So that's why I'm asking that question. And I know that you and your team are going to think this way, but I'm going to invite you to think this way and express it, because that should be alarming across the nation. I don't care what district you're in, across the nation, there is disparity there, and it remains disparity there. So now it's time to do something different. And I believe in some of our schools, we are doing different things, but I'm interested to see, and I hate to say, break it down by quarter, break it down by school, but there are some schools that do things well and have truly low numbers. What are they doing to have those low numbers? And so other schools need a little bit more support. So what are they doing that could possibly be replicated across our district that we are doing well? So those are the things that I'm particularly interested in seeing. I'm not interested in what other districts do across the nation, because I think we do everything, we are innovative and creative within our own district, and we have been for decades, so that's nothing new. But there are pockets where things are being done differently, and that's what I'm interested in. And that's, to me, that's what I'm defining as qualitative data. Maybe some schools have them write a paper, stand up in the hallway, I don't know, but what are some of the things that are being done? Maybe we survey the administrators, maybe we survey the students, I don't know. I don't think it's as quantitative as I think it is qualitative. I think it is that reflective, I think it is that restorative practice. But again, if I'm just looking at this data, I can't tell what was done by whom and when, but I'd like to see that off the paper. But I think it's not surprising to me that it's off track, because it's always off track. It's surprising to me when it's not. But we can get that number to go down. I am very curious as to how the Hispanic population went down significantly, not by, a little bit, they went down by a lot. So I'm also interested to see what was done there to make that happen. What schools was that done at, and what was, again, to me, that is more qualitative than it is quantitative. But the quantitative number is gonna be what it is. But what is it that is being done where and by whom to get those numbers to be that way? And can that be replicated? So that's what my particular interest is. What are we doing across the district for our staff around consistency in the definition, consistency in the infraction and the discipline? And then we may be able to see some disparities, again, in just how it's being administered. And then also pulling that off the paper around what I just described. But thank you for the data.
Other comments, questions by board members? I have just one, and it's just, again, the old teacher in me. I think there's a pressure to not report when it becomes a priority. I know it, I've lived it. And I also know there's the wink and the blink about categorizing certain things. And the talk about qualitative or subjective versus objective. These numbers are not good, but I don't actually believe them from a standpoint of reportage. I do think the outlier there is really cool on the Hispanic kids. I do, there's something there. It's, you look for trend lines or whatever. But I don't know how you assure or ensure that that the numbers are correct when indeed it becomes a target for us to care about, because I think it almost makes people underreport or categorize differently. I think the worst thing anybody did about bullying is when the state required districts to hand in bullying numbers. Because once you start handing in those numbers, then you're under suspicion, and so people hand in the wrong numbers. So, but we have to do this work, and I'm happy over the last administration and this administration now that I think at least seeing produced numbers, because I've sat here for a decade and then people don't produce the discipline numbers. So I don't know that I trust the numbers, but at least we're seeing something on paper. Any other questions, comments for the good of the order, administration? Mr. Crossett.
I just wanted to kind of reiterate and back up what Dr. Moffett was saying, is that the numbers are the start of the conversation, not the ending. So I think she's right, and if we can get some more granularity behind some of these numbers and some categorization, that it would probably foster a better way to address the issue.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Great.
I'll just say, and it's very brief, I really did appreciate the, effort to be preventative and proactive and to really focus on the social and emotional aspect, because I think that helps to lean into those root causes as Board Member Craig talked about. And so, yes, we see the numbers, right? And so ultimately that is a symptom. That's what we don't want to just pay attention to what those numbers suggest. We want to go deeper. And so the fact that I'm hearing you present that tone of we're looking at the deeper concerns, I'm really appreciative of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for the presentations. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn and remind people to review the Right, we're not. Even on property. I'm only asking that you study, hold on now, we got excited. Please check out the resent memo from General Counsel regarding that property on the Aiken campus, and we'll be talking about it on Monday night. And I think there's a couple other things we have, so we will be having our first executive session in a while prior to a meeting. So everybody have a great evening. A motion to adjourn? Anybody?
Second.
Thank you so much.